Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
A very busy morning here this Thursday, 7th day of August on O'Connor and Company in your nation's capital. Thanks for joining us. Coming up at 7:35, Congressman Andy Harris will have something to say about Wes Moore threatening to gerrymander him out of a job in Congress. Also, 8:05 brings us KT McFarland, and at 8:35, Alex PLITSAS, former Pentagon official, talk about the shooting at Fort Stewart yesterday. It's Larry O'Connor with the matriarch of the Mom Wars Substack. She's Bethany Mandel. Good morning, Bethany.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Have you forgiven me for my?
You got to bring it back up, huh? Just like somebody just got in their car and turned on the radio and they didn't hear it, and you're just going to do it all over again, huh?
Verbal violence, I think you could describe. Well, you know what? If you missed any of my personal attacks on Bethany Mandel, which probably did cross the line, you might want to grab the podcast, sign up and get your podcast of O'Connor and Company. It's available at all podcasts. It's the radio show, but in podcast form. It makes us cooler. Joining us right now is the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia, John Reid. And John Reid, we have a lot of topics to get to with you. First of all, thank you for joining us. How's the campaign going?
Everything is great all over the state, every single weekend during the week. I'm meeting a lot of great people who are new potential voters for the Republican Party, and that's how we win.
Well, and I've noticed that you and Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares, the Attorney General, first of all, you're doing a lot more together. And also I've noticed that you seem to all be taking the fight directly to the Democrats with renewed vigor. Is there a strategy there? I think that the Democrats are trying very hard to paint themselves as moderate, suburban, just practical, want to get things done. I don't think Virginians realize what a leftward lurch this ticket represents.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody had to focus, and I think this summer kind of drew everybody to electioneering 101. What's the choice that voters face? Solid, responsible, conservative Republican leadership that extends the good work that Glenn Youngkin has done for 4 years, or do we go back to the craziness of Ralph Northam with Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashmi leading things? And that focuses Republicans real fast, I think.
I would hope so. And non-Republican voters in Northern Virginia who, well, let's face it, parents want to be notified if their child has any sort of medical concern when they're in school. And we have this latest story now that Fairfax County Public Schools has told Channel 7 that they are investigating about two girls who claim that the school facilitated and even paid for abortions without notifying the parents. And that seems to be the Fairfax County Public School policy, that the parents are not notified if a situation like this arises. You put out a statement, but I'd love you to expand on it. What do you say?
Yeah, look, this is the insanity of the mindset of leadership in Northern Virginia schools, in Loudoun and Fairfax and elsewhere, and it's got to stop. And I would have thought that the Democrat Party, after they lost the governor's mansion 4 years ago because Terry McAuliffe basically said the quiet part out loud, that he doesn't think that parents should be in charge, that they would have recalibrated and said, wow, we got our butts kicked here. People don't like that. We should adjust. But instead, it looks like they've gone underground. And this story is really disturbing. And parents are always supposed to be in charge. They're always supposed to be informed. I don't know what it takes to get that through the minds of the people who are running these school systems. And I've got no problem standing up and saying this is going to be a big issue, and it's something I'm going to talk about every single day between now and Election Day. They're your kids. They don't belong to the state of Virginia. You get to make these decisions, and you should certainly be actively engaged in what your kids are telling the administrators and the teachers and the nurses at school.
So one of the things that I think really troubles me about Democrats these days is, and like Abigail Spanberger, is that they represent – she's not a radical anymore. She represents the turn in the Democratic Party on all sorts of issues. And one that, animates me as a Jew is anti-Semitism. I'm reading in this morning's Jewish Insider that Gabby Dutch, who's one of their reporters, she made multiple requests for an inquiry from Spanberger's campaign asking for a comment about a fellow representative, another Democrat, Sam Russell, who in recent weeks called Zionism evil. And he's not just a nobody in the Virginia state legislature. He is the chair of the House Education Committee in Richmond. This is, a pretty important perch, and for him to be saying this is really troubling. What would you, as if you get this call from Gabby Dutch, which I think you probably will, what's your response to her?
Look, the Democrats have put together a coalition of people who've got big problems with America, big problems with Christianity, big problems with Judaism, big problems with Western civilization. And it's a coalition that isn't going to work because it's going to eat itself up. And they're at this place where they can't diss a member of the coalition. I mean, if you're upset about that, wait till you see the picture of my opponent, Ghazala Hashmi, who's running for lieutenant governor as a Democrat, standing next to the Palestinian flag after the massacre in Israel. And she's basically marching with the pro-Hamas Palestinian folks here in Richmond. I mean, I got a problem with that. If you will stand with these people who are going into the streets, rallying for the terrorists overseas and bringing that same kind of hostility towards Jewish students who are here in America, to me, that's a disqualifier. You should not be running for statewide office. And everybody says, John, don't talk about it. That's too inflammatory. Is it? I don't think so.
I mean, Americans died and were kidnapped on October 7th.
Yeah. That's right. Right.
And marching with the flag, and I mean, they're basically saying, oh gosh, what a terrible thing, but let's give those terrorists exactly what they asked for.
Yeah, I think the Democrats have really done a deal that they're going to regret here, and they should recalibrate, and they should stand against barbarism. They should stand with civilization. They should stand with Virginia students, regardless of what their religious background is. I can't believe I've got to talk about that in 2025 in the state of Virginia, that we shouldn't allow Jewish kids to be hassled, abused, and physically intimidated on our college campuses. If you can't lead and say that that's wrong and stand up for the kids, then you shouldn't be in the Senate, and you sure as heck shouldn't be lieutenant governor.
John Reid is running for lieutenant governor on the Republican ticket, and he's our guest. John, a couple of other big items in the news. Everyone talking about the D.C. crime issue. We saw some pretty high-profile violent acts here, and the president is calling for the federalization of the district. This affects Northern Virginia, too. Major crime problems there, specifically Fairfax County, with their Commonwealth's attorney, who basically is allowing criminals to walk free. I saw Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears call for a recall of Steve Descano. What do you think needs to happen here? Is there something that can happen at the state level here if a Commonwealth's attorney is not doing his job?
Well, I think the recall idea is significant. And if I was in elected office and there was a widespread responsible a group of people who said, hey, you're failing at your job, that would snap me out of it real quick. I mean, what else do people need to see other than that video of that little toddler who walks away from her parents, and this guy picks up the toddler and apparently takes her up to the second floor of the mall to do what? Thank God we don't know.
Yeah.
But this guy, if the news reports are right, he had just been let out of jail. He'd been in police custody on a number of occasions, charged with a number of different things. If that doesn't shock you to see a toddler kidnapped on tape, and you don't think that law enforcement and the prosecutors have an obligation to protect us from that kind of villain, I don't know how to help. The people I talk to are very alarmed, and Republicans have got to shine a light on this passive attitude by so many of the Democrats. It's got to stop.
Steve Descano has replaced the jail cell door with a revolving door, and it's become completely unlivable in Fairfax County. And that has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat. It has to do with being a Virginian. John Reid, you're hitting all the right topics, I think. Continue the good work. By the way, the Reid Revolution Tour is ongoing, and you can jump on that tour bus as well. Just go to johnreidforvirginia.com. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure.
Larry, Bethany, thank you. I'll see you soon.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We've got an update on all the drama around gerrymandering and redistricting, specifically down in Texas. As you know, Democrats have left Austin. They have rejected the opportunity for a quorum there. The governor of Texas has basically put out an arrest warrant for them as they're violating state law. This coming after a similar escapade that they pulled several years ago, fleeing to Washington, D.C. This time they fled to California and Illinois because, if you're against gerrymandering, you definitely want to end up in Illinois, right?
I even saw a CNN reporter ask, do they have really basic research folks on staff where they can be just made aware of the fact that this is not the place to flee to?
No, it really isn't. Ken Paxton now, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show. State law in Texas is very clear that if you accept anything of value as an elected official, either in exchange for doing something specific with your job, or, then the law states this, if you accept money in exchange for neglecting to do your job as an elected official, that's fraud. That's bribery. That's against the law. And if you're offering somebody something of value in exchange for not doing their job, that's a violation of the law. And these elected Democrats, they have, in fact, received a lot of things of value, a sanctuary, private jet flights. Their entire escapade is being funded. Their PR campaign is being financed. Beto O'Rourke, you remember him. He's a failed candidate for many offices.
But I think he should keep trying.
He is. He's the Napoleon Dynamite of Texas Democrats. He bragged on CNN that he and his super PAC have raised money to finance this thing. He basically admitted that he's breaking the law. And Attorney General Ken Paxton is going to be investigating Beto O'Rourke's group for this bribery scheme.
It would be a fun book to write about Beto O'Rourke.
Oh, yeah.
Schadenfreude. Is that how you pronounce it?
What a guy. Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It would be a fun Schadenfreude book.
Meanwhile, there is a ongoing, and I love it. Listen, this has drawn focus. I think the Democrats are really going to regret making a big deal and doing this temper tantrum over Texas gerrymandering because it has drawn attention to all of the historic gerrymandering they have done in so many states, including our state of Maryland. Governor Wes Moore wants to have a national profile. He wants to jump on board and say, yeah, this is terrible. So he's now threatening to gerrymander Maryland. Understand something. Maryland is 7-1 Democrat right now. There's only one district, which I'm sure they can figure out how to get rid of it if they want to. But it's drawing attention to the fact that Maryland is already gerrymandered beyond recognition. There are three major pockets of Democrats in Maryland: the Baltimore area, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. The rest is pretty Republican. Mm-hmm. So really, they should probably be more 5-3 Democrat to Republican, but they've gerrymandered two of those seats out and made it 7-1 already. We know this. Maryland 6 and Maryland 3 got excised. So interestingly, later in the show, in just about 20 minutes, we're going to speak with that last remaining Republican, Andy Harris, and find out what he thinks about Wes Moore's threat. But listen, there's nothing they can do about where you live, Bethany. You're stuck with Jamie Raskin. No matter how gerrymandered it can be, you are surrounded by Democrats. I know. And the problem is they don't have there's I don't even know what to say about it. This is we could put a Weekend at Bernie's person up in Montgomery County as long as they're Democrat and they would be elected. Yeah. And by the way, one thing that this has illuminated is how dumb some of these Democrat governors are. I'm sorry, I don't like to call names, but some of the things they're saying are dumb. Like Gavin Newsom said, well, look at Alaska, look at North Dakota, look at South Dakota. They only have one Republican representing the state. It's yes, because literally the entire state is the district. Right. You can't gerrymander the state's borders, Gavin. Can
I make a plug for our listeners right now?
Yeah.
Montgomery County voters, everyone needs to be registered as a Democrat. I am a registered Democrat.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be a registered Democrat because you would need to elect the sanest people possible.
I hear you, but I am an eternal optimist, and I have friends who were part of the Montgomery County Republican Party, and they're
you can have your cake and eat it too, because the Republicans, you don't have to vote in the primary. They run one person. That's it. You can still vote for the Republican in the general, but you have a choice in the Democratic field, and you want to choose the least crazy option in that field.
Meanwhile, my favorite stupid thing that a governor of a blue state has said is the governor of Massachusetts, who was asked, Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker, they've said that they're going to fight fire with fire and they're going to gerrymander their states. Is that something you would consider? And the governor of Massachusetts, I forget her last name now, she said, yeah, they've left us no choice. We're going to have to do that. Bethany, Massachusetts already has nothing but Democrat districts. Yeah. I mean, it's already gerrymandered. They literally have zero Republican representation in the state of Maryland. And she says, yeah, we're going to have to, they're forcing our hand here.
Defenders of democracy. Democracy dies in darkness, yes. Larry.
Meanwhile, Katie Pavlich yesterday actually had a better solution. If everyone's concerned about gerrymandering, well, how about this?
To find out.
They wrote the rules, their rules, right? California, Republicans have 40% of the vote share, and yet they have only 17% of the congressional seats. I think in Massachusetts, it's 35% of statewide vote. They have 0 seats in Massachusetts. Maryland is very similar in terms of those numbers, but of course, congressional districting also comes down to the census, which did not count properly in the last census, and also counts illegal immigrants for representation in Washington, even though they legally cannot vote. So I say that they should redo the census, get an accurate vote, and not count illegal immigrants for accurate representation of American voters in every state throughout the country.
There you go. That's the solution. How about we redo the census but only count citizens?
Well, so I think that we still need to count the people because they need to know how many people are in a given area for schools or whatever, but they should not use those numbers. They should bifurcate.
Not for representation.
Yes, they should bifurcate those numbers.
All right, coming up, we'll talk to Representative Andy Harris, who, as we just mentioned, Westmore would love to gerrymander right out of his seat in Congress. We'll also ask him about Trump's threat for a federal takeover of D.C., something that Andy Harris has been talking about for years. He's next on WMAL.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
The busy morning just got a little bit busier. We'll give you the latest developments from President Trump, the notion to federalize D.C. law enforcement, and some other news. In fact, that thing we just mentioned with regard to a new census, President Trump, it appears, will be requesting, if not ordering, a new census to take place, since the last one, we know it, in 2020 was
we get results, Larry.
And miscalculated. Exactly. You're welcome, America. President Trump on Truth Social moments ago. All right. A little bit more coming up in the future at 8:05 KT McFarland, 8:35 Alex Plitsis on that shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Bethany Mandel. Her Substack is The Mom Wars.
The Mom Wars. And I just want to say hi to President Trump because he's obviously listening right now.
Clearly, yes. Well, that's because he knew that one of his favorite congressmen would be on the air, Representative Andy Harris, the last remaining Republican in Maryland. Although, based on things that Wes Moore is saying over this gerrymander fight in Texas, it sounds to me like he's threatening your job, Congressman Harris. Can Maryland really gerrymander anymore?
No. The bottom line is they tried to do it in 2022. That we went to court. The courts found that partisan gerrymandering in Maryland is against the Constitution, and we ended up with a settlement that kept my district Republican and had the Western Maryland district as a toss-up. I think if they roll the dice again, the RNC has tens of millions of dollars more than the Democratic National Committee. They will go to court. They will fight this to the highest level. And there's a chance that we could end up with 2 and maybe even 3 Republicans instead of getting rid of the 1 Republican if they do this attempt.
As it should be. The state votes 5-3 statewide, generally speaking, a Democrat to Republican. No one's thinking that it's a red state, but it's certainly not a 7-1 state. It's funny you should mention Maryland 6 as Western Maryland, because the reason it's a toss-up, Congressman Harris, is because it includes parts of Rockville. Rockville is not Western Maryland, for crying out loud.
That's absolutely right. And that was part of the compromise map. But if a court had drawn that map, they probably would have drawn that map into Carroll County instead of having Jamie Raskin from Montgomery County representing Carroll County. You'd make it part of the Western Maryland district, and it would reliably elect a Republican. So, they have to be careful what they wish for. I think that it's great. They puff out their chest, they thump on their chest. But in the end, if they go ahead with this, there will be a court battle, and I suspect that they could lose that court battle and end up again. Look, I'd love to have more Republican colleagues from Maryland in Congress, and I think we could end up with that.
Let me also get you in the same vein, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague Bethany. President Trump did just take to Truth Social, and I know it's a dangerous game to immediately react to some of the social media utterances of President Trump, but I'll read it to you. I have instructed our Department of Commerce to immediately begin work on a new and highly accurate census based on modern day facts and figures, and importantly, using the results and information gained from the presidential election of 24. People who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is a little unprecedented, but do you support this?
Look, absolutely. The bottom line is the American people should understand that if we weren't counting people in the country illegally, and I think there's no reason to believe that an illegal immigrant to this country should have representation in Congress. They're not a citizen. They're not even on a pathway to citizenship. The bottom line is we would probably have 10 to 12 fewer Democrats in the House of Representatives. So people should see that statistics. They should understand that the Democrats, by counting illegal immigrants, people in this country illegally for decades, actually have gained many seats in the House of Representatives. I think most Americans would reject the idea that someone in this country illegally should have representation in Congress.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another thing that President Trump is talking about, this federal takeover of D.C. You have sort of the proximity to D.C. that most other representatives don't have, but I'd love to hear from you as an employer, someone who has, folks in your office who have to live in the D.C. area. What are you hearing from your staff, from your interns? How are they reacting to these threats, although I don't know if they're threats, from President Trump talking about a federal takeover of D.C.?
Look, the bottom line is that crime in D.C. is out of control, just like it is in a big Democrat-run city like Baltimore. The Democrats don't really do anything to control the crime rate. They just, it's where they whistle past the graveyard on that. And the bottom line is that it's time that the federal enclave, the federal capital city, look like a federal capital city and be run like a federal capital city. I'm tired of looking at tent cities around Washington D.C. I'm tired of worrying about whether or not visitors from around the country, around the world, who come to our capital city, what they actually see and experience in our capital city, including a crime wave. So look, if the the Washington D.C. government doesn't get their act together, we should federalize it just like the Constitution says we can, just like the Constitution authorizes us to. And as you know, on the issue, for instance, of recreational marijuana, I've been in D.C. I've been fighting that for years. Visitors to Washington, D.C. should not walk around the streets smelling marijuana. That's not what what our capital city is all about.
Listen, the if D.C. doesn't get their act together line, though, I mean, they won't. They haven't. They don't intend to. The president, it appears, is on the verge of mobilizing federal law enforcement to shore up and, in some cases, supplement the pitiful job that the District of Columbia has done with regard to the rules of engagement in law enforcement, and perhaps even engaging the U.S. attorney to usurp the DCDA. That's one step, but ultimately it's home rule. Are there votes? Do the votes exist to reject home rule at this point?
No, because, again, we're subject to the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. If it were only up to the House, we would we'd make things much better in Washington, D.C., but we are subject to the 60-vote threshold. But, look, maybe there are a handful of Democrat senators who are also embarrassed by what's going on in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
The bottom line, their staff can't walk around the city safely either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that they don't like the idea that their taxpayers in their home state, even if it's a blue state, subsidizing the dysfunction here in the nation's capital. All right, we got to leave it there. Always a good conversation, Congressman Harris. Keep us updated on what that Wes Moore is planning with your district, all right?
Sure will.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
We often see women, mostly, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be sexist, but it's generally women sitting in their car in tears, ranting to their cell phone and then posting it on social media about what's driving them crazy, and then we get to talk about it. This latest one is no exception. Take a listen. Cut 9, please, Michael.
So as it turns out, the student loans that I've been paying $1,500 a month for 2 years have a 17% interest rate. So what I thought I've been paying off for all this time, I'm actually, I owe more than what I started off with. So Jeff Bezos, this would be a really cool time to Venmo me, bro. I owe $90,000 and I didn't even spend that much on school. Any rich person, please tap in. Kourtney Kardashian, you probably have 8 houses. I'm never going to be able to buy one because I went to college. I just signed up to be an egg donor. Guess what? Got approved. Who wants my kids? I can't afford them, so start a bidding war. Just take them. What do you want? My left arm too?
All right.
What am I supposed to do?
All right. A couple of things about this. First of all, I'm loath to take all of this at face value because there's this performance art aspect of social media, and clearly the woman is clever and says some things that are ear grabbing or eye grabbing or what have you to help this go viral, especially with the hysterics and the crying. That said, there are people who find themselves underwater because of student loan debt, and it's almost like, based on this woman's testimony, they had no idea how compound interest works and how amortization works and how debt is actually measured, and how, yes, you actually, because of the interest rates, end up paying a whole lot more than the amount that you took out. That's the whole point of interest. Also, it doesn't mean 17% sounds awfully high for a student loan, Bethany.
So James Hassan, everyone needs a Hassan in their life, and James is one of the ones that I posted this, and she says later in the video, this should be illegal. And I agree, actually. I think that giving this amount of money to children who don't know better it's predatory. I think it should not be allowed. But he called into question a lot of the math. The math doesn't math. But the problem remains. There are a lot of people out there who were not counseled properly on their student loans. But what I found interesting about that rant is that she begs Kim Kardashian and Jeff Bezos to bail her out. Yes. There's no sort of accountability of what did I get for my money? So it doesn't seem as though she learned any lessons. She feels entitled to rich people's money to pay off the debt that she took out, which made her a more valuable employee as a result. So, I mean, this is the problem with the entire generation.
Am I weird or am I just too old? But when I was 18 years old, I knew enough that if I was borrowing money and I was signing a stack of documents to borrow that money, that I better be damn sure all of the details of it and the strings that are attached and what it's going to cost me in the long run. And by the way, you can't, again, and I'm sorry, I'm literally coming from a place of ignorance because I've never taken out a student loan in my life for myself or for my children. But when you buy something with an interest rate and you pay it off over multiple years, whether it's a car or a house, there's a whole lot of disclosures. Are there no disclosures involved with student loans?
So when I took out my student loans, this sounds like a weird thing to say, but my parents were not in. My mom was dead. My dad was not really in the picture. So I was doing this alone. And I actually think that was a real blessing to me because I had my eyes much wider. And so when I was given the schedule of paybacks for the loans that I was about to take out, I was enrolled at Northeastern in Boston and I was about to take out loans. And it's on the repayment schedule, it said I would owe $500 or $600 a month, and I thought to myself, there's no way I could possibly repay that if I'm making $30,000 a year when I graduate. And so I dropped out of Northeastern after that seminar, but I was the only person in that financial aid workshop that was paying attention. Everyone else signed their names and was goofing off, and now are, in their late 30s kicking themselves for doing that. But I was the only one paying attention because I had the benefit of not having a safety net of, moving back home. But I don't feel like there was proper counseling about the loans that everyone was taking out and that I almost took out myself.
I never give financial advice, but I will say this because I told it to my kids. Whenever you borrow money and go into debt, make sure you're borrowing for something that is of value that you can use and get benefit out of, like a car, or something that will actually increase in value over time, like real estate generally does. Yeah. If you're borrowing a ton of money at a high interest rate to get a gender studies degree that's going to get you a job at a Starbucks, that ain't a good investment.
I have a friend who took out hundreds of thousands of dollars to become an eye doctor, and she was told by the school that, you know, this is what you'll make afterwards, whatever. And she didn't make enough because she's working at an obstetrician, around the corner, and she's not making that much money. And my advice to someone would be to learn from that mistake and say, don't just listen to the school. Don't just listen to their income projections. Yeah. Do some independent research, because at the end of the day, they're selling you a product that they want you to buy. They don't have your best interest at heart.
The irony is not lost on me that these are, first of all, usually children who are coming out of public education, which again is an indictment on our public schools. Yep. But secondly, they're about to go to higher education. They should have some basic life skills and understanding of math and loans and debt as they're about to become college students. But maybe that
was something that I was taught by my mother, because my mom knew that she was going to die, but that was not taught in school.
Yeah, amazing. 7:55.